she was reading that and I got teary-eyed because I was like, holy shit. And then I'm like, all of that is true. Like gratitude is always. I've never had these many people that I would talk to and would have eyes on my work. So you work on something for 7 years and you're like, will anybody see this? Will a book be published? Will a gallery care enough to show this work in the way that I want these amazing folks to be seen? And then you get the opportunity and you're like, just gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. I'll tell you a little bit about how I started the series, why I started the series, what it's been like a little bit. While I'm speaking, I'm just gonna press play. These are all images from the last 7 years, from all 49 states, plus Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and D.C., just so you have, I mean, this is a drop in the bucket. I don't have 700 images of 700 amazing beauties here, but there's a lot. So I'm one person. This is a drop in the bucket of representation as far as the trans community. And yet, hopefully you'll see the expansiveness and the beauty and the richness and all of the magic that I wish that I could transport into your brains by just giving you like my last 7 years, but I can't. So I hope this does it just a little bit of justice. So I started the series in, today is September 7th. I took my first photo September 7th, 2017. So today is, it's pretty badass. Thank you. I thought the series was gonna be 3 to maybe, I thought 6 months would be like, that's way too long to spend on a series. I really did, I've never done anything for that long. And the more I photographed, the more I realized, I know nothing. This is nothing at all, right? This is just LA. This is just Palm Springs. This is just the Bay Area, because I'm in California. So I was like, well, I'm flying to New York to visit my friend Ashley. What does the community look out there, even though I lived there for 9 years? I started photographing some of my friends, and then I was like, well, you're gonna go to Arizona, you're gonna go visit your friend Marcus in Seattle, and you can couch surf with him, so why don't you connect with the community? And the more I photographed, the more I was like, well, what does this look like in Mississippi and Alabama? Well, Fargo is pretty conservative, like let's go up there and show some beauty and representation. The series did start after He Who Shall Not Be Mentioned was elected in 2009, and all the anti-trans legislation started coming in. And I knew that, I follow a few queer photographers. I mean, I follow many, but there's several that I follow on Instagram, and I follow their work, and they're cis men, some of them of color, mostly white, doing phenomenal work, but I noticed the narrative of for, from, about gay cis male perspective. And I was like, I don't want to photograph cis men, whether gay or straight, just because I'm oversaturated with that narrative, living in West Hollywood, having lived in New York. I know I want to photograph women folks, people of color, queer, trans, and I was like, this series really, now I get to photograph women, I get to photograph people of color, I get to photograph men that are not cis. It was like it became the gift that kept on giving, validated my own queerness, validated my own intersectionality. I've been HIV positive for 20 years. Sitting down with this, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. I'm gonna try to be as linear as possible. This series allowed me to come out to my mother. Gratitude. After 16 years, I grew up with a single mom, and she's my best friend. She posed with me naked in Joshua Tree when I was 37 because I was doing a self-portrait series, and I was photographing her for her series. And she's like, I'm keeping my underwear on. And I was like, you could just cover it up. I've seen you naked. And she's like, Zach, people are gonna see this. And she drove 3 hours to the desert, so we're very, very close. She's my best friend. And yet I never told her that I was HIV positive because I'm like, what is she gonna do with that? And the more I photographed and the more I had people that sat with me and were like, I've been on the street for 2 years. A lot of trans folks can't hide their transness. They don't have the option of hiding something from their mother for 16 for however long. And I was like, who the fuck am I to ask complete strangers to give me their truth, to let me document their representation while I'm sitting here like, give me. And I was like, I cannot continue photographing if I can't. So I came out and it was lovely, and she was like, are you healthy? Are you okay? Does Mark know? I was like, Mark's my partner, he knows. And so, but again, this series became the gift that keeps on giving. I've been to all, like I said, 49 continental US states. I've been to Wyoming 6 times. I've been to so many states that I kept coming back to make sure that there's more intersectionality represented. I try to always start interviewing the person that I'm sitting with. That way I can share about my journey and they feel more comfortable to share about theirs, because it is a give and take. I try not to, I try to keep myself in check when it comes to my position of privilege, of entitlement. I know that somebody who is maybe more conspicuously queer presenting, somebody who is more feminine presenting, somebody who is a person of color would not be able to go to Shelby, North Carolina, or Jackson, Mississippi, or wherever, and knock on a stranger's door. The first road trip that I took, I drove from California all the way to Alabama. I mean, I hit up Arizona, Texas, went to New Orleans, went up to Tennessee, headed back, and I just reached out to everybody that I could. But I reached out through places like ACLU, PFLAG, Human Rights Campaign, great organizations, but also doing so much better. It used to be really, really problematic, but doing phenomenal work, because I don't know who to reach out to. And after the first road trip, I saw all these beautiful images, and I was like, fuck, almost everybody here is white. Because who's gonna let a complete stranger, I'm a grown-ass man, and I look pretty rough, so I'm usually in my jean shorts and my Converse. I'm like this, but these are shorts. And I'm knocking on your door being like, tell me your story. Like, we met online. And so from that point on, I was very deliberate with who I contact. It seems silly to say, like, I don't see color. It's like, well, you better see color. Well, you better see disability. Well, you better see age, socioeconomic, and so extremely deliberate when it comes to how I photograph this. That man right over there with the red hat, Parsa, hey dude, he's from Iran. He has a phenomenal story. I'm not from Iran, but my mom's Egyptian. Middle Eastern to Middle Eastern person, photographing him and sitting down with him. I didn't see myself when I moved here. There were no Middle Eastern queer anything. And so to sit with him and him tell me his story, and he is more visibly a person of color. I lost my accent within like 3 years because I was like, these kids are awful. And so to sit with somebody like Parsa, to sit with anybody, to sit with somebody like John, who is from a slightly older generation than me, and for him to tell me what the fuck was up in the 80s, you know what I mean? To sit with Bree, who lives in Montana and is not only out and proud, but like actually doing work, knowing that she is going to be received with such vitriol. Each and every one of these people. There's Lenny in the back. Hi. In Idaho, a person of color, like, to sit with each and every one of these people and like, just to have such immense gratitude of like, holy, I live in LA, I live in West Hollywood, I'm good. There is so much for them to put on the line that it kept being very validating to my queerness. This is why it's been 7 years, because I also don't want to stop. It's been the most challenging, rewarding, amazing journey. But so we interview first. I use natural light for each and every one of these portraits. I try for it to be either in somebody's home or at least in a surrounding that they're familiar with. I didn't study photography because I wanted to go to Brooks when Brooks existed in Santa Barbara, but I didn't have $80,000 a year because I didn't. And so I joined the local community college, even though I was paying out-of-state tuition because I wasn't legal here yet, or I was undocumented, but I could use their darkroom. And when I left there, I was like, okay, I guess I'm not gonna be a photographer, I'll be a waiter. And I was a server for 20 years, but along those 20 years, I could never put my camera down. I just had to photograph. I had to connect. That was, fuck, that's my weapon of choice. I'm like, I need to. I don't know how many of you are doing, and not for money even, I don't know how many of you are doing something in your life that you're like, I cannot not do this. I just can't. So I was like, fuck it, just do it for yourself. That's wonderful. And so it's, I continued photographing, and then I was like, well, if I'm gonna do it, I want queer voices. That's who I want to highlight. I want to highlight my mother. I'll do a photo series about her. And so I know I'm rambling a little bit. I hope this makes some sort of cohesive sense. That's it in a nutshell as far as, I think I'm not done. I'll always continue, even once a book is published, I will always continue photographing the community because there's never going to be enough trans representation in my lifetime. I hope that these photos in 20 years, I hope somebody would see these photos and be like, I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal? And it's like, right. These are, I'm sure if somebody saw a photo of a black woman and a white man, and they're a couple like in the 60s, they would have been like, oh my God. Now people would be like, okay, are they famous? The fact that people look at these and they're like, oh my God. And it's like, the fact that somebody is trans, the fact that they're trans is just an added gift. This is really just about human to human. But this is the community that's being shat on, and like everybody, most people just, not most people, a lot of people in this country are like uneducated, confused, scared, violent. That's how I choose to spend my time and money and my energy. And also, like I said, it feeds my artistic soul, it feeds my queerness, it feeds my every aspect of myself. Because this is certainly not for money. I've gone through my entire savings the last 7 years, and I couldn't find a better way to spend my resources, financially or otherwise. Can we take questions versus me? Because I'm like, it's lovely, but is that okay? I know you said like 30 to 40 minutes. I'm like, I can't talk for, I mean, I could, but I'd so much rather, if you want to ask some questions, is that okay?
Of course. Yeah, there's no time limit or anything.
Is that okay? Great.
From your heart. Happy to take questions.
Can we take questions, and then if you want, I'd rather take questions that way you guys can see some more images, and then if we want to walk around and you want to ask about a specific person, by all means, I could tell you, you could point at any of these. I mean, you could point at several people that are sitting here, and I'm like, let me tell you why I love this person, but really you could, please.
Was this one supposed to look like a Mona Lisa?
I didn't create it. I mean, I took the photo. I didn't create the, every single time somebody's like, that's the queer Mona Lisa. So I tell, this is what I mean. The first publisher that like was gonna publish the book, they're a great publisher, and they turned me down. They ended up passing on it. The top boss, she was like, Zach, these are beautiful photos, but let's face it, like, it's not that difficult photographing the trans community. They're stunning. And I'm like, I mean, I know, yes, not no, but also like, was that a backhand? What do you, because I was like, you're right. And then she's like, cool. Anyway, oh, good luck on your journey. I was like, you're not publishing the book? It's, I mean, I just show up and I think compositionally, so yes, I'm gonna try to, these are very, to me, documentary and photojournalistic in style because it's natural light. A lot of the times I don't know what somebody looks like. I don't know what the weather can do. I mean, I'll look a few days before. I usually start location scouting when I'm about a mile away on my Google Maps. I'm like, that's a beautiful archway. That might look like, I start when I get close to the person's destination. My only rule, and it's not even a rule because Christopher clearly was like, I'm just gonna show up like this. I try to tell people, like, try not to wear all black or all white, and if you do, it's fine, just try not to. And when I knocked on the door in Wisconsin, Christopher was like, I know you said not all black, and I was like, you're fine. You're good. Like, each and every one of these people just showed up the way they showed up. So I did not mean for it to be. And a lot of the times I have to get really, really like, oh, where do I, it was blasting outside when I was there. This was like, it was so hot outside. It was like the sun. It was like, I think 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So I have to get creative and I'll like, let's just sit in your living room. I'll interview you and then we will see what comes of it. And as Christopher was like, you know, talking and stuff, I was like, by the way, you're gonna stay in that chair when we're done. Let's just try it out. So I didn't mean for it to be, but Christopher's been in 3 different exhibits, and every time they're like, I heard there's like a queer Mona Lisa in the gold frame, and I was like, in the back to the right. So yes, I didn't mean for it to, I just showed up. And this is what Christopher opened the door being Christopher. Yeah. Any questions at all, please?
What was your experience with the non-binary people, or were most people binary trans?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to date somebody that I don't date anymore, but he was the one when I started. He's like, he was younger, he was much more like sex positive, very queer, very political, very like, and he's like, you better make sure you do this responsibly, and if you say you're documenting the trans community, they better be binary, non-binary. Not that I wouldn't have, but like, he already set me off on the path of like, they're letting you into their community. Yes, we're all queer and la-di-da, and that's wonderful. Make sure that if you're saying this is the tapestry of Americana when it comes to the trans community, fucking do that shit responsibly. And so I was lucky enough to start from the beginning. There's been a narrative, there's obviously a lot of transphobia, but it was very interesting being let in and talking to so many non-binary folks that are like, there's several people that were like, I'd love to be photographed by you, but I don't think I'm the right fit. And I learned very quickly to always ask a follow-up question, be like, may I ask a question, and please let me know if I'm overstepping. And they're like, sure, what's up? And I was like, do you think that you're not trans enough to be in the series? And they're like, yeah. Because there is so much gatekeeping and policing of like, who's trans, who's not trans. The first publisher, Kerr Verlag in Berlin, they did, do you know Jess Dugan, Survive on the Shore? Phenomenal book of trans elders. They wanted to publish the book, and they said, hey, Jess Dugan, I know like Jess is part of the community, they did elders and you're doing everybody, would you be okay if we did your book as just non-binary people? And I said, I would have a problem with that. And they were so open to being like, can you elaborate? And I said, well, this is what I've seen, just experiencing, coming in from the outside. So many, the separation of, if they wanted to do a book of like non-binary people, trans-binary people, I have found, and if I'm overstepping even here, by all means, anybody in this room could let me know, but I've noticed that it creates more transphobia of, when you gatekeep, you're like, you don't look this way, you don't sound this way, you haven't had top surgery, you're not on estrogen, well, guess who suffers? Black trans women, not to be so literal, but black trans women at the bottom that have no resources. So imagine there's a beautiful black trans woman living in West Hollywood and she has to do sex work and she's living on the street. She can't afford an electrolysis, she can't afford the right weave, she can't afford nice makeup. Somebody would look at her and be like, that's a man in a dress. And I don't just mean cis people. Trans people would be like, not trans enough. So separating that, I'm like, this is gonna be so problematic. And so my experience with a lot of, most non-binary people have, thank God they've settled themselves in spaces that are safe when it comes to geography, whether it's like, oh, I'm gonna be in North Carolina, I'll be in Asheville. I'm gonna be in West Virginia, I'm gonna be in Morgantown. Right, but for people that are like, no, I wanna be in Fayetteville because I'm coalition building and my family lives here, it's been lovely to see. Most non-binary people do not have that experience, but I've seen so many that are like, I'm constantly being judged by not, there's 2 people on my last big road trip that were like, they got top surgery to prove to the trans community, they're like, I'm still happy with my decision, but I feel that a big part of why I got top surgery was to prove to my friends that keep misgendering me and they're trans, that I'm trans enough. And these are part of your community, people that are fighting and hopefully rooting for you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Aiden.
Hello.
What you just said, because like I experienced it personally, like from our own community. I mean, I'm Persian, I'm Parsa's friend.
Hi.
And I do not want to like label myself, but the thing is like, it was one of my friends who was trans, and she attacked me and said like, oh, you are not man enough because your leg looked like a woman. So I don't see that in you, that you're trying to say that like, oh, you want to be a man, or just you identify as this, but I don't see it. Like, the sad thing is like, you get those judgments from your own people. That I was like, okay, who cares if my legs look like a woman, and I'm okay with it, you know? You're not okay with it, you want your leg look like an actual woman, who cares? Because we don't look at these things.
Certainly.
Like here, unless like you focus on it and like, yeah, that's difference, you know?
Absolutely.
So it made me so uncomfortable that I see that like a person like me that is judging me like over my legs, or maybe like like my chest is not length enough, or my voice, you know, obviously right now because of my voice, like people judge me like still calling me she, her, you know, but I'm okay with it because I believe who I am, you know, I don't care like if my voice is like still, you know, as my past life, or like didn't change, you know, with like along my transition to be a male or non-binary. But I don't really care what people think or say.
Absolutely.
But the funny thing that I hear from a person exactly like me say like I'm not man enough, or like whatever I'm saying, like I am, and I'm not that. So it's like, no, don't think about it. You're not that person. You're still that female that you're trying to be the male version of yourself, you know. So, and just like it's sad to hear.
And I try to. Obviously, a lot of narratives within the trans community are like, it's very heavy. Sometimes I interview up to 6 people in a day, especially during summertime when the days are longer and I could start photographing at 6. I remember I photographed in 4 states. I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, went to Spearfish, down to Wyoming, I passed Gillette, Sheridan, went up to Lame Deer, Montana on a reservation, it was just, I have to be readily available and make sure that when I sit down with somebody, I'm so present because they took the time to share their truth. And who the hell am I to be like, I'm kind of tired, so I'm like kind of listening, but it's like, no, I have to be so when I hear a lot of narratives that maybe are not the happiest, maybe are not the most uplifting, I need something to bring me back to like humanity. Not that there's not humanity with each and every person that I meet, but I've also been pleasantly surprised. Like I'll hear about a trans person gatekeeping another trans person's transition and you're like, fuck, that sucks. And it's heavy and you're sitting with it and you're driving 3 hours to the next person. And then I'll stop and get gas and somebody in a camouflage hat and not Waltz like Harris, like not that camouflage hat. And I'm getting gas and I was like, again, acknowledging my privilege of being like, I'm safe here. I feel safe because I look like I do, even though like Fox News is playing in the background, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, what are you doing out here? I saw your California license plate. And I'm like, oh, I'm photographing around the country. What are you photographing? Oh, just taking portraits. What kind of portraits? And then I'm like, the trans community. And they're like, the what? I was like, the transgender community. They're like, oh. And you could tell they're like, okay, and I'm like paying and I'm getting stuff. And then I've been surprised so many times where I'm like, this person's gonna be an asshole. And they're like, can I ask you a question? And I was like, sure. And humanity will reveal itself. I'm so ready to write this person off and be like, what dumbass shit are you gonna say and how am I gonna have to school you and get back into my car really fast and get the hell out of here before you call your friends? And time after time, when I least expect it, my friend Hannah told me, don't try to predict the outcome for the detriment or the success. Just be responsible for you and so many times I've been people like, so if I'm talking to somebody and they're like a girl but they're a boy, I was like, hold on a second, how are they presenting? And they're in a dress and makeup, and I said, great. So they're celebrating their femininity. And I'm like teaching somebody and like, hey, thanks so much. I'm so afraid to ask. People are so afraid to ask. They're like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to say a stupid thing. And then I find this person's humanity that I stopped at a gas station to go, the last 7 years there's been, I'm going to tell you a story. KJ, the police officer, I photographed KJ, who is, he's a very dear friend. I've known him for several years. The last exhibit I had at the LA LGBT Center, it was defaced. Opening weekend, somebody wrote ACAB. All cops are beautiful. No, all cops are, KJ's beautiful. KJ has transitioned on the job in Charleston, South Carolina, works with a bunch of old racist white cops, does sensitivity training with the police, works with sex workers in Charleston, specifically trans sex workers of color, works in so many different spaces. He is so beautiful. I was photographing in Indiana, and then I had a shoot. This is after I photographed KJ. And I had to, that day I was going into St. Louis, Missouri, so I passed through Southern Illinois. I forget which highway it is. And my dog is at the Airbnb. I woke up super early, walked in, and I'm like, gotta get to St. Louis. I'm gonna photograph all day, and then gotta get back, walk Curtis, and then go down to Kentucky and around. Like, it's go, go, go time. And I got pulled over, and I saw several units, and I was like, I'm like, okay, keep 70, and I was like 70, 71, and still, I got pulled over, and I was like, I know I didn't speed. I got pulled over, and the cop's like, license and registration, did you know you were speeding? And I know better. I was like, I didn't know I was speeding. If I was, I apologize. He's like, can I see your license and registration? I showed it to him. He's like, can you actually get out of the car, please? And I was like, I'm not going to argue. I was like, sure. Oh, before I get out of the car, what are you doing out here? I'm actually photographing in St. Louis. I'm from California. My dog is in Indianapolis. I'm just spending the day and I'm getting back. What are you photographing? The trans community. The what? The transgender community. There's no trans people here. And I was like, okay, well, there's at least 20 minutes away because I'm photographing them today. And I just photographed a bunch in Indianapolis, so like an hour and a half that way. And I actually photographed in Champaign, Illinois on my last road trip, so I'm like, there's trans people in Southern, sorry, but they're everywhere. And he was like, okay, well, I haven't seen any. And I was like, he's like, well, I've never met one. And I said, not that you know. And he was just like, can you get out of the car? And I was like, fuck. I was like, damn it, like, couldn't you choose a better, it's fine, fine. I was like, of course, of course, of course. He puts me in his cruiser, he's like, can you sit in the passenger side seat? And I said, of course. So he's like, oh, can I check your trunk? I know this is, he's not supposed to, but I was like, of course you can. He checked the trunk, there's nothing there, all my bags are at the Airbnb, there's a dog bed in the back. He's like, I was like, again, my dog is blah, blah, blah. We're sitting and he's looking up my stuff and he's like, so you photograph the trans community? And I said, yes, I do. He's like, really, how long have you been doing that? And I said, 4 years. At the time, it was 4 years. And he's like, so there's trans people that you're photographing today? And I said, yeah, there are. How is it? I said, it's an awesome journey. I'm a queer man myself, and it's just really awesome to, like, you know, visit so many queer people and spaces in this beautiful country of ours. And he goes, I'm going to be honest with you, you weren't speeding. This is just a very heavy drug route from New York to California. Your car is filthy, and it was. I was on the road for 3 weeks at that point. You're a guy by yourself, and I had like a beard and my truck. I was like, I looked conspicuous, fine. And he's like, I'm gonna have to write you a warning because I pulled you over and we have to have something on paper, but I won't give you a ticket. I said, thanks. I said, but I do have an appointment in like 25 minutes. He's like, yeah. Again, I don't think there's trans people here. And I was like, I swear to God there are. And he's like, okay, okay. And I said, can I reach for my phone? And he goes, sure. And I pulled up KJ's photo and I said, I just want to show you something. And I showed it to him and he's like, why are you showing me a photo of a cop? And I was like, and I told him about KJ. He does sensitivity training. He's like, that guy's a she? I was like, Zach, be patient. You just met him. You're educating this man. And I was like, yes, this man was assigned female at birth and he transitioned on the job and he's married to his high school sweetheart and blah, 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 blah. A white woman. He was like he caught the dig. And he was like, so I said, yeah, he's one of you guys. And he does phenomenal work. And he's a badass. And he has old racist white cops following him sometimes when he drives home in his truck. And he goes, man, that's fucked up. And I said, yeah, it's fucked up. And then he was like, can I ask you some questions? And I said, anything. And he's like, so if I'm meeting somebody, and I told him like, hey, if you're meeting ever a sex worker that you're like, that you know maybe was assigned male at birth, ask people. Don't be so handsy if you're arresting somebody that you're like, oh, I think that's one of those trans people. They go through a lot with body dysphoria. And I was educating this man, and he was like, so do you have an Instagram? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so you said you're working on a book? And I said, yeah. He's like, I'd love to buy your book when it comes out. He still follows me on Instagram. Him and his wife and his Labradoodle, they don't have any kids because he wants to vacation. But like this man, and he like likes a photo every once in a while. Like that's to me the same way that this was spray painted and destroyed because it affected somebody in such a powerful way, because let's face it, the police has a very problematic relationship with not only queer people, but especially trans people. there's also so much humanity and opportunity in those spaces if you look for it and if you take yourself out of the equation and your feelings, because my feelings are just my feelings. And sometimes when I'm tired and I'm hungry and I'm on the road, I could have been like so much more flippant, and who knows, maybe he would have arrested, I don't know, he would have given me a ticket and he wouldn't have heard the story about Keisha, but I was like, you're on the road to document somebody else's representation. That means you're now representing their voices. Don't be a fool. And because of that, because I like, Zach, take that, just behave. It was lovely to teach a complete stranger, and especially somebody with a badge who has power and could really fuck with people. So there's been many, many instances of humanity where I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. Oh, here we go. Transphobic, homophobic, racist. And it's like people will surprise you if you just stay open and you take your feelings or whatever you think this is. And that's also how I try to, I don't always succeed, photograph. It's perception versus perspective. At the beginning when I started the series, it was very much about my perception, even though I was like, oh, they're gonna teach me something, but there was a part of me that was like, I know what I'm doing. And the thing about perception is it's usually biased. It's your feelings about something. You're gonna try to do it, if you do it with your perception, I swear this makes sense. If you do it with your perception, then you're kind of gonna get in your own way because you're gonna you're already perceiving it as something, so you're like, oh, it should be this, and you're trying to mold it or like squeeze a thing in a circle, and it's like, but when it's perspective, when I've noticed that finally, it was at around year 2 or 3, I was able to take myself out and be like, still doing everything that I know and have learned and pay attention and be present, but it's almost like watching myself do something and not getting in my own way. And when I get in my own, be like, you're getting in your own, move. Just let the person, like, they clearly wanna show you something that you're trying to be like, no, you should show me this about you. And it's like, you're interviewing them. That happened with, I was in Battle Creek, Michigan, and I don't know if you've seen her already. She's amazing, her name is Zamariana. Her and her mom work in the auto factories. And she's out and proud, tall, statuesque, beautiful black woman. And when I first met her, she was so excited. I photographed her Auntie Kim in Phoenix, and Auntie Kim grew up in Detroit, and she's like, honey, let me know when you're up there because I know people in Indianapolis, I know people in Detroit, all around Michigan. You just tell me and I'm gonna tell him, Zach's one of the good ones. He's gonna photograph you. And I was like, oh my God, Kim, thank you so much. Hey Kim, I'm gonna be in Detroit. She's like, are you gonna be in Battle Creek, Michigan? I'm like, I'll go anywhere in Michigan. She connected me with Zamariana, and Zamariana opened the door, and she was posting on Facebook, I'm gonna be photographing with this photographer, Zach. I'm like, girl, I'm nobody, but okay. She was so excited, and I show up, and she was like, she's tall, like painted on blue jeans, like thigh-high red boots, skimpy black top, and underneath was a red bra that was like showing, and she was like, what do you think? I was like, you look fabulous. And we interviewed at her kitchen table, or her dining room table, and then we started photographing. And she's like, where should I stay? And it was really, again, we had to photograph inside because it was blasting sun outside. I was on my way to Detroit, or sorry, I was on my way to Indianapolis that time. And I proceeded with my perception. I was like, she's a black trans woman, she's very tall, very dramatic. I don't want her to stand somewhere where she's gonna look like a sex worker, whatever. I was protecting her from something that she did not need protecting from. She wore that for a reason. I was so fucking pissed at myself when I left. My partner knows, I was like, for months, I was like, fuck, I fucked this up. Because I could have taken photos of her and not used, they could have been for her, and I'll use other ones, but I wanted her to be, I can't believe I'm saying this word, I'm not saying this ironically, demure. I'm not like, I know, I've used it a year and 2 years ago, I'm not saying it that way. I wanted her to be like respectable, and it's like, who the fuck am I to tell her, who? She works her ass off. She puts her ass on the line, and here I am letting my perception dictate how she's gonna be represented. And I didn't catch it till I was on the road, 45 minutes out of Battle Creek, Michigan, driving down to Indianapolis, and I was like driving, I was like, fuck. I just realized, I was like, I fucked up. I didn't hold space for her the way that she wanted, she wore that for, who am I? And I did apologize to her, and she was like, Zach, what are you talking about? Nobody ever, like, you came to Battle Creek, Michigan. If I work in an auto plant, I was like, Zamarian, I swear we will have another photo shoot. I will make it up to you. I'm so sorry. And she's like, I caught it, but I caught it too late. The next year I went especially to Battle Creek, Michigan, and we like sat and talked and we caught up and we did outfit changes, so I didn't miss a damn thing. And she wore like a beautiful like red dress. This time I think it was black boots. And she's like, I can't wait for the third one. And I was like, let's see if I have enough money to get up here. But that was one of the times that I very much learned, like, do not let your perception ruin these photos. It's gonna be, I don't want people to see this and be like, I mean, it's lovely if they're like, that's a Zach portrait because of composition. If there's something that repeats itself, that's just the way that my brain visually thinks. But I don't want people to see this and be like, that feels inauthentic. Or that feels like the photographer had like, not produced, but you know what I mean? When you could feel, when you see a person, you're like, that person looks uncomfortable. Or that person looks like, I don't know, it's something about it doesn't ring true. That's my failure, that's not their failure. Because they're showing up the way they're showing up. And if I'm showing up being like, this is how you should be documented, that is like, we're done. I just fucked, like, what's the point? Go elsewhere and do something else. So I wish I learned earlier, but it was around year 2 or 3 that I was like, oh, there's moments where I'm like trying to control it and it's totally, it still might be a beautiful photo and people are like, that's beautiful, and I know better, and I feel like I'm taking a compliment for somebody else's achievement. You know, when you like cheated or like you already heard a riddle and you're like, oh, is it because the backpack and the parachute? And like, how did you get that? You're like, I know. And then you feel like shit at the end of the night. You're like, why did I take that? That wasn't mine. I wanted to make sure that I earned these because I showed up, and not because the photo's beautiful, but because the photo's beautiful and it's absolutely that person. Sorry, that was a lot. Yeah, please.
I was noticing, we were noticing that a lot of the frames match the photos so well.
Yeah.
Like the rusticness of the wood in the frame back there,
yeah,
just the image so well.
Yeah.
And like you could have taken the banister rail there and made that frame out of it.
Yeah.
To me, that was really neat.
Thank you. To have a throwback to what I just said about not taking credit. So my partner right there is a in-store designer, and he's like, I think you should break up the monotony of the white and throw and maybe like match the wood with the grain. So like, I can't really, yeah, that's Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Can you imagine if I was like, thanks? Mark's like, he didn't learn a damn thing. He's lying to everybody. Yeah, that's Mark. He did that, yeah.
It uses outside of the photograph, so I mean, even
yeah. Thank you, yes. I'm lucky to have a good group of people around me that I could show photos to, I could like talk about, I have a really good group of people that lead me and call me out on my shit and keep me accountable. So, and give me amazing ideas that I'm like, yeah, absolutely, that's it. I think that would absolutely add to the series. Yeah. Anybody? I'm like, where? Oh, it's nice. Please.
I have. I gather from when you were first talking that we have some of your subjects
yes.
photographed here in the room, and I think it's a unique opportunity to kind of hear from maybe somebody that you photographed what that experience was like.
I would love that. I mean, if they're okay with it.
Yeah.
Anybody? Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Lenny. I use they them pronouns.
Hi, Lenny.
Yes. I use they them pronouns. I am from Idaho. For me, it was really special to have Zach come. Like I said, I live in Idaho. It's not great there right now. It's a very red state. I was actually born and raised there. Over 86% of the people that live there are white. The rest is every other color. There's not 2% of black people there. So I already kind of have a little tough, just kind of starting out. But having Zach come and kind of like validate who I am and how I feel and seeing me for who I am, this is all gratitude, was just like really, really special for me. Sorry. Where we live, I feel very, honestly, like in danger a lot of the time. There's not a lot of places I can go that I feel safe, I feel comfortable, I can be exactly who I am, and like that's fine. Like on a good week, someone will use my pronouns like once. So having someone come to my house and see who I am for me and just like letting me just be me and photograph me how I want to be seen was really, really special, and it really meant a lot to me. And that's why it's like so important for me to come and see you again and just like say thank you in like person. But yeah, it's just like such a special, great experience, and you are just like so comforting. I don't know if you remember, but I was like so nervous when you came because I didn't know what was going to happen. I am constantly kind of in a fight or flight mode, you know, at home. So I don't know what it's like having this person in my house. I've never met him. I talked to him twice. What am I doing? Like all of those thoughts. But he came and just like immediately gave kisses to my dog and was like so sweet. And he was like, I'm here for your dog too, but I'm mainly here for you. And just like tell me your story. And he just kind of lets me like word vomit my like what my life has been like for 23 years, living in a state that doesn't really want me to be there. And so it was just like really special to be able to do that. And I just want to say thank you. And seeing even all these people that like I can get, these people are like me, just like really means a lot. So. Yeah.
Alexa Lynn, please.
I think that in me shortly after I spent time at the Capitol testifying, I don't think you got a true picture of me because, I mean, you made me feel so good, but I was still in shock from the ordeal of defending my existence. And one of the things, I will echo everything you said. I mean, it took me a while, and I wish that I had an opportunity to do it over again. But
I'll be back.
Value to be able to be affirmed after that experience. So for that, I'm very grateful. But I also, when I was looking at these and reading some of these, I wonder how, because I feel I'm kind of privileged when I go where I want to go, and I just ignore the things that are said. Yeah. And I just, I mean, it's like, I remember when I first came out, I listened to them, and after 6 months, I finally decided, you know what? I haven't heard anything as severe as I've told myself in the past, so your words can't hurt me. And so I just kind of don't give a shit anymore. But where was I going with that? I was struck by the number of how hard it is to live in this country. I was assuming that Idaho was one of those pockets of hate and that other areas were better. And the more I look at the pictures and read the stories, it sucks all over. I guess I'm asking, is that a fair estimation? Because I remember when I first came out, like 12 years ago, traveling to my ex-wife's in Minnesota, going through North Dakota and Wyoming, and I'm like, one day it hit me when I'm getting gas, this is where Matthew Shepard was. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the rest of the trip took a totally different view. Yeah. How is it traveling around? I mean, because I don't travel outside very much anymore.
I paused it on this because John is going to say something after, and that's his portrait. As you're saying that, I was like, huh. I mean, yes, but also, and again, this is coming from my position of being spoken to with the right pronouns, I'm gonna have a completely different interaction with everybody. And when I'm sitting with somebody that I'm interviewing, even though they might have it rough, they're like, finally I get to tell my story, and they're grateful to be seen and to share their journey with a fellow queer person where they hopefully feel safe. By the end of it, absolutely, I hope they feel safe. And so, Eric in the corner, the close-up, the far left top, most of these interviews, you know, like some of them are 10 pages long. They're an hour and a half, some of them are 15 minutes. And he talks about his sobriety. I I didn't want repetition with obviously subjects, but also their narrative. And so he talks about his sobriety and like a hard time that he had. I spoke to Eric after I transcribed his interview, which I often do. When I transcribe somebody's interview, I just want to check in on them because I hear their voice and I was like, it's like yesterday, so I just want to like check to see how they're doing. And he's like, hey, Zach. And I was like, you have my number? And he's like, of course. Do you not have my number? I was like, well, I mean, I called you. I have your number. And I was like, how are you doing? He's like, oh, so the guy that I was dating at the time, we're married, we bought a house, there's a pool, he has 3 dogs, and he talks about putting his dog down and promising his dog that he was putting down that he was gonna get sober, and people cried so I understand that some of them might seem, and I know that I've had many people say, God, they're really sad. And I'm like, they're not sad. And then I've had people being like, I love them, they're so like, it's like a silent middle finger. Just facing the camera is a silent middle finger, but a lot of it, and I was like, don't smile for the camera. Smile because you thought of something that made you smile, but don't smile on my account. I don't want it to be performative. I want you, if it's sitting or standing meditation, let it be that, because I want it to be you thinking about whether it's past, present, future. And so a lot of the times it's introspection, and I think oftentimes when people read the words and they see a face that is not maybe smiling, they're like, that's really heavy. And I'm like, it's not. It's actually a story of resilience. It's actually a story of overcoming. It's just how you view it. And I know that it's very difficult because text has no subtext really, right? If you're reading it, you're like, it's not as nuanced if you're having a conversation and then there's intonation and you're like, oh, that was a happy story. If you're just reading the words, which that's all I have at the moment, but no, yes, there's a lot of hardship that I've heard, but I've also heard so many stories of like, let's coalition build. I'm not moving anywhere. Like, there's so much of that, and that's what I focus on, whether it's not to be like, the trans community is fine. Obviously not. I'm not like trying to dismiss or deny anybody's actual truth in their day-to-day, but I also want to concentrate on their power and on their vulnerability, but I want to highlight whatever they want to share with me. So yes, while there have been many times that I've interviewed where I was like, fuck, that sucks. Then they'll talk about something like, started dating somebody and like, I can't believe at this stage in my life I found like the one person and like, they proposed to me and I was gonna propose to them and like, they beat me to it, but guess what? I'm gonna take him up to the mountain and I'm gonna propose to them because they're not gonna expect that because they already proposed to me. And I was like, do you want to tell your story?
Sure.
Hi, Bree. Sorry, I'm just gonna like, burp.
I thought that sounded familiar.
You're like, what? I know them. I know them.
Yeah, my name's Bree.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
They are all fabulous. We did two?
We met like 6 years ago, and I was like, if there's one person I want to check back in with in Montana, it's Bree. I was like, I just want to know how she's doing, and I was like, I'm gonna be in Montana. What's up? And you're like, I'll meet you. You can take it away.
Yeah. Zach met me at 2 really different, awesome, polar opposites in life. When Zach met me, I was heavily involved in gender activism and trans healthcare work throughout the rural Northwest, very heavily in Montana. And I really enjoyed that work, but it was also really, as many people in this room are well aware, that work can be very tolling in conservative and small Montana and other communities. And while I got a lot of great things from it, it also, took a lot away from me. And then fast forward 6 years. Was it 6 years?
It's 4 or 5 years.
Well, 4 or 5 years later, Zach's like, hey, I'm passing through, what's going on? well, I'm not doing gender activism anymore. No, now I'm working in the trades, and I pretty much said I don't give a shit about what I assumed would be a difficult to impossible task, and here I am thriving in Montana and loving it. And by the way, I'm a master electrician now, and I'm doing this, and it was, you know, it was one of those great moments to sit there as we chatted back and forth and to reflect on, like, I've done these things, but now I'm doing these things, and to see the bittersweetness of it. Like, I miss activism, and I miss helping my community, and I miss raising awareness of the existence of my community, especially in Montana. But to be a trans woman working in a really conservative trade that's male-dominated in Montana, and be out and open and not give a shit, and to sit back and go, you know, I'm in many ways maybe blazing a path for future trans people to do the same and to prove to these close conservative whatevers that, hey, we're here and we're doing this, and it was really cool. And then we went from there to, by the way, yeah, I'm married.
What about wrestling?
Oh yeah, and drag wrestling, Montana drag wrestling.
I'm doing drag wrestling in Montana, and half of the guys that I work with that are MAGA are coming. I'm sold out for my second show. I was like, what? No, Montana? Yeah, like, we're both doing drag wrestling, and like, the show's sold out.
Yeah.
That's when there's humanity in play, like, that's, yeah.
Yeah, and it's always just a pleasure to get to, you know, at that moment when you reached out, it was one of those moments where I was like, in my head, very much like, oh, I'm doing all these things, but what am I doing for my community?
Yeah.
How am I giving back to my community? And kind of feeling discouraged. And then you reached out and we chatted, and you're like, but you're doing this, and you're doing this. And it was just amazing to reassure me that, you know, it doesn't have to be this binary fixed ideal path that I've envisioned of how I have to live my life. It can be just this beautiful fluidity, and it makes me happy. So.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you know what I'm saying? Like we all have these, it's like, how do you, I just think you're phenomenal. We're sitting here like, I don't know, I'm not doing activism. I'm like, you're out with all of these dudes, but like you somehow worked your ass off, proved yourself, and then on top of that was, whether gregarious, whether whatever, charming enough where they're like, we'll buy your tickets, we'll take a chance. Like, their friends would be like, that's gay. Like, it's just, everybody's doing the best they can with what they're given. But when you were like, I'm not doing anything, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's, my friend Ashley's like, can you just say you're proud of yourself? Like, I was like, I'm very content. She's like, can you, and like, here I am, and I'm like, can you just like acknowledge your, and I hear I do the same thing. I'm like, oh no, yeah, I get to do what I love. I can't take credit for this. And it's like, you're doing great work. Ashley, I'm doing great work. It's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. John, would you like to, since you're on the screen?
Since I'm up there. This is from the second time that I was shot by Zach. This was earlier this year. The first time was in 2019?
19. 18, not,
somewhere.
Pre-COVID.
I've been a letter of LGBT. And somebody asked, if it was you, about it. Has it always been bad? Like, no, you didn't say how. It's always been, I can't remember what you said. But it's always sucked.
Yeah.
It's different now than what it was before. Partly before, before the current type of manifestation. You didn't hear about it because nobody talked about that kind of stuff. And everybody was here. I wasn't transitioning then. I didn't start transitioning until I was 45. I'm turning 69 in, a week or so.
Work.
So I've been transitioned for a while. And I've also been, I guess, a professional trans person. I have what I believe is the first degree in transgender studies. I mean, there's other people before me who got PhDs in anthropology or in history, but mine was multidisciplinary transgender studies, not from an English department, rebranded as women's studies, rebranded as gender studies. I was more in the social sciences and health sciences side of things. Anyhow, and I worked in Washington, D.C. on trans issues, and I had gotten to I'd also been a moderator, facilitator of in-person and online support groups back in the very earlier days of those sort of things. And, you know, it takes its toll doing that kind of stuff after a while, which you can maybe attest. And I got burned out in part because of the people who were my biggest attackers, and in part because I live in Seattle rather than in Montana. But it sounds like you've had some wonderful things happen there as well. Is that there's newer people on the scene, largely from a non-binary place, also younger in their lives and in their self-discovery, who like to attack people like me. And I just got tired of this. I had put so much of my life into doing things for the community, including money, and making decisions in my life that are not going to benefit me financially, and quite the opposite. I never had much money in the first place. It's like I'm just kind of, and I'm getting older. So I want some time when I can be, I'm looking after myself here now, like I've always done. And I'm also a generation, I became an adult in that very first wave post-Stonewall. I came out as soon as I moved away from a small town I grew up in. I've always been on the cutting edge. I got crap all my life. If I got called a gay slur, it was almost exclusively, well, it was always, I was called fag in some sort of form. But oddly, it was almost always goddamn motherfucking fag. For some reason, that phrase, like all these different people, that's what I got called. And so, as you can tell, then I probably was not fitting the stereotype of what a woman looked like. So I've been dealing with crap for a long time. I was very visible. I couldn't be closeted, even if I wanted to. So I dialed way back, and then on a hookup app one day, I get a message from some guy. And it's not like I've really given up doing anything that's going to benefit the community. But like I said, dialed it way back. And then I get this message, and I thought, oh, somebody was hitting on me because now I've got this new cachet that I never had before in my life. Now I'm like a hairy daddy. That's such a thing. Okay, and I thought it was one of those kind of things, like, he's handsome. And
thank you, John.
But then he was like, no, take your pictures. And I was like, oh, maybe this guy isn't so cool. And because I'm very upfront in my profile. Very upfront. And I've had a lot of things. But then he goes, no, it's like, I'm doing this project. And as we chatted back and forth, it sounded increasingly like, oh, this guy sounds legit. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. I'll meet him somewhere, not my place.
We met at Steamworks. No, we did not. Go. Continue. I'm sorry. I'm not. Yeah, the Eagle. At Barnes & Noble. Yeah.
It was a beautiful summer day. We met at a park in Seattle. I just hit it off with this guy so tremendously, and the more I talk with him, the more I love this guy. I totally love this guy. I love his work, and I love his intention behind his work. And I live in Seattle. I don't live down here, so I don't know, maybe somebody else drove a ways to be here. I was in Oregon for some other reasons, but I kind of made it all work out, so I would still be here for today and for the opening. And I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so glad that you're all here, because his work is really special. And his approach and who he is really special. And I'm glad you're getting a little taste of it.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Back to when I said I was like ACLU, PFLAG, Human Rights Campaign, and most of the people that were inviting me were white, and I had to be like, where do I find people? I would join Facebook groups that were private and be like, at that point I had a bit more work accumulated, and I was like, hey, this is who I'm, you know, parents of trans kids. This is who I am. I would interview your child with you in the room, obviously. I've interviewed other kids, blah, blah, blah. But again, it was really wide, so I was like, okay, Facebook groups, Instagram, and then it became like Scruff, Grindr, any place where I could find, because most places, it's just, a lot of spaces are very white, and a lot of queer spaces are extremely white. And I had to get very resourceful and and the longer the series went on, I didn't even have to use the apps as much. It was very word of mouth, and not just word of mouth, but having been to each and every state, Starbucks, Barnes & Noble, every time I went to a different place, I met, like Oklahoma, where Amber's from, I didn't just go to Oklahoma City or Tulsa. It was like I wanted to make sure that Bartlesville, McAllister, Viannes, like places that I'm like, what is this place? And there's trans people there. That in itself was so amazing that I'm like, holy shit, like queer folks are everywhere, right? And with that, if I'm going back to Oklahoma, let's say, I know at least 15 people that I could be like, hey, I'm going to be passing through. Are there any folks that you think whose stories should be shared and documented? And they're like, let me set you up. And with that, it's been so lovely when I talk to people and they're like, I'm going to move to Oregon. And I was like, where are you moving in Oregon? And they're like, I'm going to move here. And I was like, I don't know anybody. And I'm like, I got you covered. It's so lovely to be able, there's apps for trans folks where it's like, which bathrooms can I use at which truck stops and gas stations, because that's how fucking bad it is. And it's so nice to have created such a network of almost 700 people in every single crevice of this country that when somebody's like, I'm moving to Michigan, I don't know anybody, I'm moving to Texas, and I was like, let me set you up with resources, let me set you up with centers, let me set you up with people that you can either couch surf, you could talk to, you can pick their brain. It's been such a lovely, having done the work, it's been so nice to be able to pay it forward in a tiny little way when I meet certain people. It's been really amazing, just creating this network of community, really, and connecting people with each other. And I had an exhibit in Provincetown, and I got to give 3 tours to, it's called Camp Lightbulb, and it's 3 different weeks. The first week is like 12 to 14-year-olds. Second week is 14, 15, 16, and then 16, 17, 15, 16, 17, and they're all queer. 85% of each group of like 35 kids is trans and non-binary. And them coming through the space, and that exhibit had 52 pieces, one from every state, plus Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and DC. They were like, where's Kentucky? Like somebody was from Kentucky, and I was like, oh, Gabe is in the back on the left. They're sitting by, like, they would run with their friends, and like, kids were crying in front of, like, looking at Lucretia, they're like, how old is she? She's 73? There's trans people that are 73. These kids were like, it gave them like, that's a black trans woman who life's expectancy is supposed to be 35. She more than double that and is eloquent and is powerful, and she does public speaking. They were like in awe. I'm in awe of her, but for them to, those are their elders. I have my elders. And so to see, there's something so magical about seeing people reacting to your work in front of you. It's like the coolest fucking thing. And especially when they don't know that I'm the photographer, and just like standing back and somebody like crying or just like, come here, you have to read this to their friend. And I'm just like, I'm the luckiest SOB. Like, I don't know what I did to deserve this, but like, this is like, I've got the, like, it's the golden ticket. And so to see the work actually having an impact when you're like, does anybody even give a shit? When you're on the road and you're tired and you're like, if I have Subway sandwich one more, like and you're broke, so you're like Starbucks, Chipotle, if you're lucky, like Trader Joe's, fill it up. You're like, is anybody even I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and you're like, just keep doing the work, just keep doing the work. And then to have people, to watch them experience it is just, it's like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. If I can give you like 1% of like the magic and be like, this is what I experience getting to not only do this, but watch so many beautiful people like hold space for themselves, you would be like, it's pretty amazing, yeah. Any other questions from anybody? Please.
This is not so much a question, more an observation.
Yeah.
Something that's simultaneously obvious about photography, but also not really recognized, which is that photography is a chance for somebody else to literally look at the world through another person's eyes. And that when you're coming in and saying, I'm not going to lay my trip on you, I want you to show me who you are. They're not just showing you, because then everyone who looks at the picture is looking through your eyes. And so you're creating a path for somebody who normally is only looking with their own preconceptions and prejudices and everything. Suddenly they're being given a clear sight through your eyes into somebody actually being an individual human being and being who they are and happy with themselves, or every mixture of combination of how people feel. And that's something that photography and film, which is photography's child, can do really better than anything else. And I think it's really important, not only for people within the community to be able to have that experience and to feel seen and represented, but for people who, like your policeman who pulled you over, to suddenly get a view into a world that's more human than they thought it was. So I think it's really important.
Thank you. Diane Arbus, I believe, said, a picture is a secret of a secret. And the more it shows, the less it reveals. I love that when people come. My friend Chris, in my first exhibit, he's a like stoner, skater, amazing photographer. Straight, cis, like stereotypical California. And he came to my exhibit and he knows what I've been working on. And he was like looking at these, and like I could see him, you know, I'm watching my friends and strangers and stuff and people that I had photographed in LA were like, it was great to see people like in the room and be like, oh, this is awesome. And then I saw him and he like ran over to me, he's like, they're all trans. And I was like, yeah. He's like, and he started getting teary-eyed. He's like, there was a photo of a gentleman named Dwazi that I took in Oakland. He's like, he's cool as like just like smoking a joint, and he's like turquoise. I mean, he's just like the cabbie hat, lovely. He's in Harlem now. And Chris was like, they're all trans. And I was like, yeah, dude, I told you what it's about. No, he's like, I know, but I was like, oh, they're trans. Yeah. He's like, by the 5th or 6th one, I was like, I was reading their story and it's a human being. I was like, I forgot that they're trans. And I was like, great. He's like, I smoke a joint. That's how I sit when I smoke a joint and I talk to my friends. That guy, I was like, Wazi? He's like, it's just, and something so simple. I mean, we would be like, that's silly. And he's a photographer and he's very, very left politically. And he's just like, I forgot that they're trans. And I was like, okay, he's like, it's my own shit and my own hang up. Once I was like, wait, they're trans. Kind of like, what does that mean to me in my head? And I'm an ally. You know what I mean? It's like, I said nothing about the photo. And at the time I didn't even have text next to the photos because it was the beginning. It was my first exhibit. There's something really lovely about not saying too much and just letting, I think one of the most dangerous thing any artist can do, whether it's a musician, whether it's my least favorite thing that an artist can do, and some of my favorite like musicians do this, is to don't explain your art to your audience. That is so dangerous. I will show the work, you take whatever, sometimes doing a talk like this, like if I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, I don't want to say too much because I want you to experience it and then we can talk about it. There's something almost patronizing when you explain it to the audience, like they're too stupid to get it, so you have to tell them what you meant. It's like, no, just create, put it out there. If somebody sings a song and I'm like, oh God, that's such a beautiful heartbreak song, I'm like, oh, it's about my grandfather dying. I'm like, you just took me out of it and now you put your shit. I'm never gonna hear that song the same way again. And so there's something really lovely to not, to just create, put their words, put the image, which is why I love natural light. I don't want any of these to be produced or photoshopped. Just put it up there and let people take what they, Alexa Lynn, they look so sad. Somebody else might see sadness. Somebody else might see a rage. It's like, all of those things can exist independently of each other. We're all we all have that in us. Who am I to tell you, no, I think they were sad in that photo. Whoa, that resonated with me in such a way that now you're telling me like, that's not how you're supposed to translate that. I think it's lovely that they reveal as little as possible by showing such a, this is just who I am, you take whatever you want out of it. Like, almost like leave me out of your shit. You know? Yeah. Any other questions?
We had a show years ago by Mary Barrett in the early days of the AIDS crisis when it was so stigmatized and so full of people not being able to actually see anybody other than their own mental idea of what this meant. And the show was portraits of women with AIDS and their kids. And these beautiful portraits. And they were supposed to have text panels like this, but the show came from another venue and they forgot to send us the text panels. So people came in, they looked at the show and, oh, look at these wonderful, beautiful moms, they're so great, you know, and all this stuff. And then they get to the back of the gallery and it says, all these women have AIDS. And people were like, wait a minute, exactly like your friend, wait a minute,
yeah.
I gotta see this show again.
Yeah.
Let me go back around the room. You know? And I think you're right to kind of, can we get past whatever labels and stuff you already have? Can we get past that and just interact with each other person to person? Yeah. It's really powerful, and sometimes that requires withholding information.
Absolutely. That's part of the reason a lot of folks from the community are like, why does nobody have their pronouns on here? Pronouns are really important, especially to the community. And people are like, why are none of the pronouns on there? And I was like, I don't want anybody pronouns on there. The way that especially cishet folks, when Chris, who I just told you about, is a lovely guy, but even he was like, oh my God, they're all trans. There's something about, I've seen when cishet people ask me questions about the portraits, they want to like, I don't want to say they want to clock somebody. It's almost like I want to be able to dissect, what were they born? So they could be like, oh, I could see by that. And it's like, why is that? It's just a human story. And also, so many folks have moved from non-binary to the binary, binary to the non-binary. And you could see how so many, again, cishet, usually conservative folks are like, see, they can't even make up their mind. It's like, it's another tool to like discredit somebody's journey. So I was like, I'm not putting any, there'll be an interview if somebody's like, this is important, these are my pronouns and this is what I go by. Fine, absolutely, you read the text. But to have it next to the name, the trans community is so heavily scrutinized and people dissect it. And even when they mean well, and they're like, no, I've got trans friends and blah, 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 and I'm an ally and I vote this way. And it's like, they'll still be like, they almost want to be like, where can I excavate and dissect this person? And it's like, that's not for you to do. That is none of your business. Why do you need to know how somebody was born? Are you getting naked with them? It has nothing to do. There's such an obsession that I was like, I'm going to completely take that out of the equation. You don't have that. And when you ask me, I often say, why? Yeah. Why do you want to know? And people are like, I don't know, I just want to know. Why do you want to know? Do you want to ask me if I'm circumcised? Why do you want to know? Are we getting naked? Then it's none of your fucking business. And again, why are they not on there? Well, it's a human, what does it matter? And people I've never gotten an answer that I was like, oh, well, then let me tell you. I haven't gotten that yet. And so that's also part of the reason where it's like, just experience these. It's just a human story. Absolutely. Anybody else? You guys can walk around as well, and yeah. How do we feel? Are we good? Sweet, guys, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much.